Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to give you that shortcut to understanding complex topics without, all the noise.
Exactly.
Today, we're diving into some really interesting research from Anthropic. It's their paper called Economic Index, AI's Impact on Software Development.
Yet it's a fascinating look. They've analyzed how developers are actually using their AI models, specifically Claude and the more specialized Claude Code.
So our mission here, for you listening, is to pull out the key insights. What's really happening in software development right now because of AI? And maybe more importantly, what clues does this give us about the future?
The future of AI's impact across the board, really economy, society, the works. We think you'll find some pretty eye-opening stuff in here.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The paper kicks off with a point that seems simple, but is actually quite critical.
Right.
It notes that while computer programming isn't, the biggest job sector by numbers, it has this outsized influence.
Absolutely. And these jobs, the paper argues, have just seen dramatic shifts, really just in the last few years, all thanks to AI.
And Anthropic had already spotted a signal, didn't they, in their earlier economic index work?
That's right. They noticed that U.S. workers in computer fields and also comp sci students were using their general Claude model way more than average, a disproportionate amount.
So that was the clue.
Exactly. That sort of flagged that something significant was brewing in this specific area, which led them to dig deeper with this analysis, looking at the actual usage patterns.
Okay, so getting into the specifics, they analyzed, 500,000 interactions?
500,000 coding-related interactions, yeah, across both the general Claude.ai and that specialized Claude Code.
And from that massive data set, they pulled out 3 key patterns. Let's start with the first one.
Okay, the first big one is this distinction they draw between automation and augmentation.
Right. So just to clarify for everyone, automation is basically the AI doing the coding task directly with minimal human steering.
Whereas augmentation is more collaborative. The AI is helping the human coder, boosting their abilities, working alongside them.
And the difference they found between the two platforms was, pretty stark.
It really was. On Claude Code, the specialized tool, a whopping 79% of the interactions were classed as automation, only 21% augmentation.
79% compared to the general Claude.ai.
Much more balanced there. It was almost 50-50. 49% automation, 51% augmentation.
So what's the big picture takeaway from that massive difference?
Well, it strongly suggests that as we get more AI tools designed for specific jobs, like coding in this case, we should probably expect to see a lot more automation of those tasks.
Because Claude Code is built for coding.
Exactly. It's already showing that shift.
Yeah.
The AI is taking on more of the actual doing, not just assisting.
Okay. Interesting. What was the second key pattern?
The second one focuses on what developers are building using AI. And the main thing seems to be applications that users like you and me interact with directly.
So front-end stuff.
Primarily, yeah. The most common languages they saw were JavaScript and HTML fundamental web development tools. And related to that, tasks involving UI, user interface, and UX user experience were right at the top of the list.
So what does that imply for the future?
Well, the paper kind of hints that roles focused on building simpler apps, maybe basic websites, those front-end interfaces, they might feel the impact of AI automation sooner.
Sooner than, say, complex back-end systems.
Potentially, yes. As AI gets better at spitting out that front-end code, the demand for humans doing that specific part could change. For you, this might mean websites and apps get built or updated quicker.
Makes sense. Okay, pattern number 3.
This one's about who is adopting these tools the fastest. And the early signs point towards startups.
Really?
Yeah, the preliminary data shows startups were responsible for about 33%, a third, of the conversations on Claude Code.
And compared to big companies?
Much lower. Enterprises are only around 13%. That's quite a gap in adoption rate.
Wow, yeah. What do you think that is?
It kind of fits a historical pattern, doesn't it? Smaller, nimbler outfits often grab onto new tech faster. It gives them a competitive edge.
While bigger companies might be more cautious.
Exactly. They have established processes, maybe more security hurdles, legacy systems. They often move a bit slower. So this early lead by startups could really boost their speed and efficiency. For you, maybe that means more cool, innovative apps coming from these smaller players.
Okay, those are the 3 main patterns. But the paper goes deeper, right? Into how developers use Claude, breaking down automation and augmentation.
It does, yeah. They looked at subtypes of interaction, which gives a much clearer picture of how AI is fitting into the workflow.
And what stood out there?
Well, two patterns were way more common on the specialized Claude code. The first is called feedback loop.
Okay, what's that?
That's where Claude pretty much does the task on its own, but the human user needs to check it, validate it, maybe ask for a correction.
So AI does the work, human supervises.
Basically, yeah. And that pattern made up almost 36% of interactions on Claude code, much higher than on Claude.ai, whereas just over 21%.
36%. Okay, and the other pattern?
That was called directive. This is even more hands-off for the user. They just give the instruction and Claude gets on with it with minimal back and forth.
Almost pure delegation.
Pretty much. And that accounted for nearly 44% on Claude Code compared to just 27.5% on the general AI.
Wow. So on the specialized tool, those two automation-heavy patterns make up, what, 80% of the usage?
Around that, yeah. Feedback loop plus directive is about 80% on Claude Code.
And conversely, the augmentation styles, things like using AI for learning or iterating together on a task or getting help validating your own code.
All much lower on Claude Code, significantly lower.
Which really underscores the difference, doesn't it? The specialized tool is being used much more for direct task execution.
Exactly. While the general LLM still has a bigger role in that kind of collaborative problem solving or learning.
And it raises that big question. As these coding agents get even smarter, what happens to that human role in the feedback loop?
Right. Does it become less about active coding or correction and more about high-level oversight? Or specifying the goal really clearly? It's a key question for the future of developer roles.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The paper also looked at the specifics of what developers were building. We touched on web languages.
And the numbers confirm that web focus, JavaScript and TypeScript together were about 31% of the queries.
And HTML, CS.
Another 28%.
Yeah.
So yeah, combined, that's a huge chunk focused on those front-end user-facing parts of software.
Were back-end languages represented too?
Oh yeah, Python was there at 14%, and it's versatile, used for back-end, but also data stuff. SQL for databases was about 6%. But the main thrust definitely was web and UI UX.
Which connects to the top coding tasks they identified.
Absolutely. Number one was UI UX component development at 12%, and number two was web and mobile app development at 8%.
This seems to lead into that idea they mentioned, vibe coding. What's that about?
Yeah, vibe coding, it's an intriguing term. It suggests a future where maybe you don't need deep technical expertise for everything.
How so?
The idea is you could just describe the vibe or the outcome you want in plain English, make a button that looks modern and pops,
Yeah.
And the AI could handle translating that into the actual code, especially for visual elements and styling.
So less focus on syntax, more on the desired result.
Potentially. The paper suggests if AI keeps improving, this could become more common, especially impacting developers who focus heavily on component creation or styling. It might also lower the barrier for people wanting to build simple things themselves.
Interesting. Okay, let's circle back quickly to who is using these tools. We mentioned startups leading on Claude Code.
Right, the paper gives the numbers. Startup work was almost 33% on Claude Code, much higher than on the general Claude.ai. Enterprise use was actually a bit lower on Claude Code, around 24% versus 26% on Claude.ai.
The really striking part was individual use, wasn't it?
Hugely significant. If you group together students, academics, people building personal projects, and folks just learning or following tutorials, that collective group makes up half of all the interactions across both platforms.
Half. So it's not just businesses driving this.
Not at all. There's this massive groundswell of individuals experimenting, learning, building their own things. That has huge implications for, education, democratizing skills, all sorts of things down the line.
It really does feel like that classic tech adoption curve. Startups leap for an edge, but individuals are exploring out of curiosity and learning, which feeds the whole ecosystem.
Exactly.
Now, we should be fair. The paper itself points out some limitations to this analysis, right? It's important context.
Absolutely. And it's good they're transparent about it. First off, this is only looking at Claude and Claude Code usage.
Yeah.
It doesn't capture what's happening on GitHub Copilot or other platforms.
It's a slice, not the whole pie.
Right. And they also mentioned that line between automation and augmentation can be a bit fuzzy. That feedback loop pattern, for example, the AI does the work, but the human has to check it. Is that fully automated? It's debatable.
Yeah, it still needs that human step. What else?
Well, figuring out who the user was, startup, enterprise, student, involved some inference based on limited info from the chat. So there could be some misclassifications there.
Okay.
And they also flagged that this data probably represents early adopters. These might be people more eager to try new things than the average developer.
So maybe not fully representative of everyone yet.
Possibly not. Also, the data was just from 1 week in April 2025. So any longer-term cycles or seasonal things wouldn't be captured.
And critically, they looked at what people asked the AI to do, not necessarily the quality of the code it produced or if it was even used in the end.
Right. They studied the delegation to AI, not the outcome from AI. These are all important caveats.
Definitely. But even with those limitations, the trends seem pretty significant, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Even with the caveats, the signals about the direction of travel for software development seem pretty clear.
So let's broaden out, thinking about those trends more automation, especially via specialized agents, the focus on user-facing apps, startups getting a jump start. What are the bigger implications here, beyond just coding, for AI and society?
Well, it throws up some huge unanswered questions, doesn't it? Like, will that feedback loop we talked about, AI codes, human checks, be the main way things work long term?
Or does AI get so good that the checking becomes minimal or even unnecessary for many tasks?
Exactly. And what does that do to the role of a software developer? Does it become less about writing lines of code and more about architecting systems, defining problems really well, managing the AI tools?
And which specific jobs within software development might change the most, or even disappear?
These are tough questions, but crucial ones, especially if you're thinking about a career in tech, or just trying to understand how work is changing more generally.
And there was one implication that felt particularly recursive. The idea that AI helping code could speed up AI development itself.
Yeah, that's a really profound point in the paper. So much cutting-edge AI research is software engineering. If AI can make coding faster, more efficient, maybe even help find bugs or optimize algorithms.
Then it could actually accelerate the pace of AI breakthroughs themselves.
Precisely. Creating this positive feedback loop, potentially speeding up the whole field. And that has massive implications way beyond just software. It could impact how quickly AI transforms, well, everything.
It's a huge thought. So ultimately, this look at software development might be like looking through a keyhole into the future for other fields.
That's how the paper positions it, and I think it's a fair take. Software development might be acting as a sort of leading indicator. The patterns we see there, the rise of automation, the changing skill requirements, the competitive shifts between nimble startups and established players.
We might see similar dynamics play out in law and finance and creative industries as AI gets more capable in those domains too.
It seems very possible. We can't just copy and paste the findings, obviously. Each field is different, but it gives us an early, valuable glimpse of the kinds of changes AI might bring. So for you, watching how AI impacts one industry can help you anticipate changes in others, maybe even your own.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Our deep dive into this Anthropic paper shows pretty clearly, I think, a rapid shift towards more automation in software development.
Especially with specialized AI tools like Claude Code.
And a real focus on building those user-facing applications, the websites and apps we interact with every day.
We also saw that startups seem to be embracing these tools more quickly than bigger corporations, potentially gaining an edge.
And underscored the huge amount of individual learning and experimentation happening alongside business use.
Right. And maybe the biggest underlying point is that this progress in AI-assisted coding might feed back into AI development itself, potentially speeding everything up.
Which has those broad societal consequences we were just touching on.
Exactly. And for you listening, we hope digging into this one specific area has given you those key insights, those aha moments, without feeling like you're drowning in data.
By focusing on software development, we get a clearer view of these bigger forces shaping our world as AI becomes more embedded.
Definitely.
So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Thinking beyond software, what other industries do you see following similar patterns? Where might automation and disruption pop up next?
And perhaps more personally, how might your own role, your own skills, need to adapt and evolve in a future that's increasingly collaborating with, or even directed by, AI?
It's certainly a lot to think about.
It is. But hopefully this deep dive has given you a solid starting point for your own thinking and exploration of these really complex, fast-moving trends.